You ever make a decision in life and immediately know it's going to piss off all the wrong people? Yeah, that was me when I bought my slice of paradise. 10 acres of untouched land, conveniently located right next to a homeowners association that clearly thought it was the Vatican of suburban control freaks. I wasn't looking for trouble. In fact, my only goal was to live a quiet life, work remotely, and enjoy my personal kingdom of trees, dirt, and absolute freedom. No manicured lawns, no pastel-colored houses, and certainly no one telling me what shade of beige my fence should be. Just me, my land, and the great outdoors. But, of course, nothing screams invitation for harassment quite like minding your own damn business. And so it happened one day. There was the arrival of the clipboard mafia. Started about a week after I moved in. I was on my porch, coffee in hand, admiring the sunrise when I heard it. The unmistakable whir of several electric mobility scooters rolling up my dirt driveway like a low-budget Mad Max convoy. I counted 4 of them, each piloted by a person who had perfected the fine art of looking both smug and constipated at the same time. The leader of the pack was a woman in her late 50s with a precision-cut bob so stiff it could probably deflect bullets. She had a clipboard clutched in one hand, her nose tilted at an angle that suggested she could smell my lack of HOA compliance from a mile away. "Good morning," she called out, in that fake cheerful tone people use when they're about to ruin your day. "I'm Linda Perkins, president of the Fairway Estates Homeowners Association, and we'd like to welcome you to the neighborhood." I sipped my coffee. "That's very kind of you, Linda, but I'm not in your neighborhood." A flicker of annoyance crossed her face before she plastered on an even bigger smile. "Well, technically, you are adjacent to our community, and we have certain standards to uphold." "Yeah? And I have certain standards for coffee, which is why I'm gonna need you to get to the point before mine gets cold." Linda's lips thinned. "We'd like to extend an invitation for you to join the HOA. It would ensure that your property aligns with our guidelines and maintains the aesthetic harmony of the area." I looked over at my property. A bit of wild grass, towering trees, and an old rusted truck I hadn't gotten around to fixing yet. Then I looked at their neighborhood. Rows of identical houses, white picket fences, and lawns so artificially green they probably violated some environmental law. "I think we have different definitions of harmony, Linda." Her smile didn't falter, but her eyes screamed murder. "It's a simple process. Just sign these forms, agree to the community rules, and you'll be officially part of Fairway Estates." I took the stack of papers she shoved at me, glanced at them, and whistled. "Wow, 87 pages? That's more than my mortgage agreement. It's just standard rules about lawn care, exterior paint colors, vehicle restrictions, holiday decorations, and general upkeep. Oh, and there's a small monthly fee, of course." I handed the papers back. "Linda, let me save you some time." "No. Hell no. Not in this lifetime. Not even if you paid me to join." She blinked, as if the concept of refusal had never occurred to her. One of her cronies, a man wearing a sweater vest despite the 90-degree heat, piped up. "But without HOA oversight, your property value could plummet. You'd be hurting the neighborhood." I leaned in slightly. "Buddy, if my unkempt property is enough to tank the value of your Stepford paradise, that sounds like a you problem." Linda's smile finally cracked. "I see. Well, that's unfortunate. But you should know, even as a non-member, your property still needs to adhere to certain community standards." "Let me stop you right there," I said, holding up a hand. "I looked into this before I bought the place. I'm not under your HOA jurisdiction, and you have exactly zero authority over what I do with my land." A beat of silence. The scooters whirred ominously. Linda exhaled sharply through her nose. "Well, we'll be in touch." And with that, the clipboard mafia turned their scooters around and rolled out, kicking up a pitiful amount of dust in their wake. I took another sip of my coffee, watching them go. "Well," I muttered to myself, "that was fast." You ever get that feeling that someone is watching you? Not in a creepy horror movie way, but in a nosy neighbor with too much free time kind of way. That was my life for the next week. Every time I stepped outside, I caught glimpses of pastel-colored sedans creeping by my property at 2 miles per hour. When I went into town for supplies, I noticed a few concerned citizens side-eyeing my truck like it personally offended them. And then, of course, came the letters. The first one arrived about a few days after Linda's scooter squad graced my driveway. It was an official-looking envelope with a return address from the Fairway Estates HOA. Inside was a letter that managed to be both aggressively polite and deeply unhinged at the same time. Dear property owner, it has come to our attention that your property is in violation of several community standards. While we understand that you are currently not a member of the Fairway Estates HOA, we strongly encourage you to reconsider, as compliance with our regulations ensures a more pleasant and harmonious neighborhood for all. Specifically, we have observed the following issues. Firstly, excessive natural overgrowth, your lawn is an eyesore. Secondly, improper vehicle storage, that rusted truck is a safety hazard. Thirdly, non-compliant fencing, your existing fence does not meet HOA aesthetic standards. Failure to address these concerns may result in further action. We hope to see improvements soon. Sincerely, Linda Perkins, President, Fairway Estates HOA. I read the letter twice, just to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. Then I laughed so hard I nearly spilled my beer. Excessive natural overgrowth? Linda, it's called nature. It was here before your HOA, and it'll be here long after you're gone. Improper vehicle storage? The truck was parked on my land, in my driveway. Was I supposed to teleport it into a garage I didn't have? Non-compliant fencing? Lady, I don't even have a fence. I crumpled the letter, tossed it in the fire pit, and went about my day. But that was only round one. By the end of the week, the letters were coming daily. Each one was more ridiculous than the last. They even started fining me for things like failure to maintain a visually pleasing aesthetic, $100. Unauthorized use of a non-approved mailbox design, $75. Neglecting to install proper exterior lighting for community safety, $200. I would have ignored them completely, except one morning I stepped outside and found a bright orange violation notice stapled to a wooden stake in my front yard. Now, I'm a pretty chill person, but when people start touching my land, I get a little twitchy. The sign read, Official Notice of Violation. Your property has been cited for multiple infractions. Immediate corrective action is required. Failure to comply may result in legal action. Linda had officially lost her damn mind. I grabbed the stake, yanked it out of the ground, and marched over to the HOA's little beige clubhouse at the entrance of their pristine neighborhood. I walked in, violation sign still in hand, and slapped it down on the counter so hard the receptionist nearly jumped out of her skin. I need to speak to Linda, I said, smiling just a little too wide. Do you have an appointment? She stammered. No, but I've got a whole lot of free time and an illegal notice that ended up on my property. So how about we cut the bureaucratic nonsense and get her out here? The receptionist practically sprinted to the back. 30 seconds later, Linda emerged, clipboard in hand, face set in that tight, I'm trying to look polite but I hate you expression. Ah, she said, eyeing the sign. I see you've received our notice. I crossed my arms. Yeah, you stapled it to my land, which, fun fact, is called trespassing. But I'll let that slide if you explain to me, in simple words, why you think you can fine someone who doesn't even belong to your HOA. Linda sighed like I was a particularly slow child. You may not be a member, but your property's appearance still affects the greater community. As such, we have a vested interest in ensuring all nearby homes meet our guidelines. I leaned in. I don't live in Fairway Estates. I don't pay your fees. I don't give a single damn about your guidelines. So unless you've got a legal document that says otherwise, you can take your fines and... Linda raised a hand. Now, let's not be uncivil. Civil? I laughed. Linda, you've been harassing me since the moment I moved in. You're sending me fake fines. You put this, I gestured at the sign, on my land. How exactly is that civil? She gave me the kind of tight-lipped smile people use when they're trying to pretend they have control. Perhaps we should discuss this at the next HOA meeting. I grinned. Oh, I'd love to, because at that moment I decided, if Linda wanted a war, I'd give her one. If you've never been to a homeowners association meeting, let me paint you a picture. Imagine a courtroom drama, but instead of real legal issues, it's middle-aged suburbanites bickering over lawn gnome placement and whose garbage cans are too visible. I walked into the Fairway Estates HOA clubhouse that evening, dressed for the occasion, worn-out jeans, work boots caked in dirt, and a t-shirt that read HOA, Homeowners Oppression Agency. Classy, I know. The meeting room was exactly what I expected. Beige walls, fluorescent lighting, and a long folding table at the front where the High Council of Karens presided. Linda sat dead center, flanked by her loyal minions. Sweater vest Steve, pearl necklace Patricia, and some guy who looked like he did power naps in a tanning bed. The room was packed with residents, most of whom had clearly shown up for the free cookies. A few gave me the side eye, others just looked amused. Linda cleared her throat. Let's begin. First on the agenda. Ongoing violations by, she adjusted her glasses dramatically, our new neighbor, who has refused to comply with reasonable community standards. All heads turned to me. I grinned. Evening, folks. First time here. Do we do an icebreaker or just jump straight into the baseless accusations? A few snickers rippled through the crowd. Linda's eye twitched. She pressed on. As I've stated in multiple letters, your property is in direct violation of several of our guidelines. Now, while technically you are not a member, Hold up, I interrupted, raising a hand. Let's circle back to that word. Technically? Linda, I'm not a member. Period. Which means your guidelines mean as much to me as a kindergarten rulebook. A few residents chuckled. Linda, however, was not amused. But your property affects our neighborhood, she snapped. How? Is my grass hurting your delicate HOA sensibilities? Did my truck personally insult your white picket fences? Your property value affects ours, sweater vest Steve chimed in. If you let your land become he waved a hand wasteland, it drags all of us down. I leaned forward. Okay, let's do a little experiment. Who here has seen my property? A few hesitant hands went up. Now, who here has been directly harmed by the unkempt wilderness I call home? Silence. Linda pursed her lips. That's not the point. The point is, I cut in, you don't have any legal standing. I checked. You have no authority over me, no jurisdiction, and no way to enforce your make-believe fines unless I voluntarily submit to your HOA dictatorship. Pearl necklace Patricia gasped like I had just confessed to tax fraud. Linda, however, wasn't done. If you refuse to comply, we will pursue legal action, she said, all high and mighty. I smiled. Oh, please do. I would love to see a judge's face when you tell them you're suing a non-member for not mowing their lawn to your satisfaction. More laughter from the crowd. A few of the residents were nodding now, clearly realizing how ridiculous this was. Linda's face had gone full tomato red. This meeting is adjourned, she snapped, slamming her clipboard on the table. I clapped my hands together. Well, that was productive. See you all next time. Assuming Linda doesn't throw me in HOA jail before then. The next morning, the real harassment began. I woke up to find my mailbox missing. Not knocked over, not vandalized, just gone. Poof, like the HOA had called in a tactical strike. Then my water mysteriously shut off. Then, a mysterious anonymous complaint was filed with the county about my property being a public nuisance. I had to give them credit. These people were nothing if not committed. But what Linda and her goons didn't know was that I had already started fighting back. I'd installed a few security cameras after the first round of nonsense, and guess what they caught at 2:37 a.m.? Linda, in her own damn car, pulling up to my mailbox and loading it into her trunk. I laughed so hard I almost choked on my coffee. Instead of calling Linda directly, I filed a police report. Theft? Check. Trespassing? Double check. Then, I took it one step further. I called the county inspector about my public nuisance complaint, and guess what? Turns out the only actual nuisance was the HOA itself, because they had no right to file complaints on property they didn't own. By noon I had, first of all, a police officer knocking on Linda's door. Secondly, A county official investigating the HOA for fraudulent complaints. Thirdly, video evidence of Linda stealing my mailbox, which I plan to unleash at the next meeting. Oh Linda, you wanted a war? You just got one. Linda's reign of terror had officially entered its self-destruction phase, and I had front row seats. By the time the police finished their little chat with her, she had gone from smug dictator to red-faced mess. Apparently, she tried to claim the mailbox incident was just a misunderstanding. Something about removing an unapproved structure for the good of the neighborhood. The cop, bless his soul, just stared at her and said, "Ma'am, it's not your neighborhood." That alone made my day. But Linda wasn't done yet. No, she doubled down. Because that evening, I got an official summons from the HOA. They were demanding that I appear at another meeting to explain my continued defiance. Oh Linda, you really don't learn, do you? The HOA clubhouse was packed this time. News had spread fast. Half the neighborhood was there either out of morbid curiosity or because they smelled drama. Linda, despite the legal spanking she'd received earlier, was still trying to act like queen of the cul-de-sac. She banged her gavel. Yes, she actually had a gavel, and started in on some speech about community unity and protecting neighborhood values. I waited until she finished, then stood up. So, I said, just to clarify for everyone here, this meeting is about my defiance, right? Linda gave a tight smile. Correct. And that includes my violations, like the mailbox situation? Yes, she snapped. I pulled out my phone, connected it to the little projector they used for PowerPoint presentations, and hit play. The footage of Linda stealing my mailbox lit up the screen. Silence. Then absolute chaos. Wait, that's her. She stole his mailbox? Linda, what the hell? Linda's face turned ghost white. This is out of context, she stammered. I was simply stealing my property? I finished for her. More gasps. A few HOA members actually looked genuinely horrified. You told us he was the problem, someone from the crowd shouted. This is ridiculous, Linda hissed. You're making a spectacle of this. Oh, you want to talk spectacle? I said, grinning. Because I'd love to discuss the fraudulent complaint you filed with the county inspector. Linda went stiff. Turns out, I continued, you can't file official complaints about land you don't own. And when you do, that's called fraud. The HOA treasurer, a man who had spent the entire meeting looking like he regretted every life choice that led him here, suddenly shot up from his chair. Wait, we could get sued for that, he blurted. Yup, I said. And since Linda is the one who signed off on it. Half the board members turned to her, eyes wide with panic. At this point, the meeting was full-on mutiny. Linda tried to regain control. She banged her gavel so hard it snapped in half, but it was too late. People started yelling. Some demanded her resignation. Others demanded to know what else she had been lying about. I just leaned back and enjoyed the fireworks. Then the HOA secretary, a woman who looked like she had been waiting for this moment, stood up and said, I motion to vote on Linda's removal as president. The whole room exploded into cheers. Linda, in full meltdown mode, shrieked, You can't do this. Sweater vest Steve sighed. Linda, we literally can. And just like that, she was out. By the next morning, the entire neighborhood had turned on her. HOA members were demanding audits, digging into past fines, and questioning everything. As for me, firstly, my mailbox was returned, in pristine condition, probably out of fear of another police visit. Secondly, the county inspector formally warned the HOA about filing fraudulent complaints. Secondly, all my bullshit fines were immediately voided. And Linda? She resigned from the HOA entirely, packed up, and moved within 2 months. Apparently, being publicly humiliated in front of the entire neighborhood wasn't her idea of a good time. As I sat on my porch, watching the HOA scramble to rebuild from their self-inflicted disaster, my new neighbor, an older guy named Tom, wandered over with a grin. Well, he said, handing me a beer, that was the most entertainment this place has had in years. I laughed. You think they learned their lesson? Tom took a sip. Probably not. But Linda sure did. And honestly, That was good enough for me.